Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Preceding this presentation, we had one of those very important moments to recognize the long service of one of our colleagues. And as we listen to those eulogies, I think all of us should be reminded of the awesome responsibilities that we share here in the House of Representatives. Bill Young obviously felt those responsibilities deeply and carried them out for an extraordinary length of time, 43 years. We're thankful for his service, for his memory, and also for what he has taught us about perseverance and about steadfastness. And also, as you could tell from the various eulogies, about working across the aisle. It's working across the aisle, it's finding the middle ground that I want to spend some time on tonight. Like my 434 colleagues, when we finished voting last Thursday, we all left this chamber, I think in a rather somber mood, realizing that 16 days had passed and our government was shut down, and the likelihood of damage to America and Americans. When we got home, I suspect all of us, and I know this certainly was my case, confronted by our constituents, and they were not happy. In fact, they were angry. They were angry that their government, the government of the strongest, most powerful nation in the world, wasn't operating because its legislative body had failed, and we had failed to find the common ground, that we had failed to really protect this nation and Americans. It was a grand debate over the Affordable Health Care Act, and then it morphed into some other kinds of concerns and ultimately wound up somewhere about the deficit and about the default. At the end of that process, I don't think Americans really much cared what the debate was about. What they cared about was the very nature of our government and whether it would be able to operate. It was a heavy toll. It was a heavy toll on our nation. It's estimated that was well over a $24 billion hit to the economy. And I know that in my own district, there was a tremendous hit. I had, as I got off the plane here in Washington, D.C., returning today from California, at the airport ready to fly back to California was the Chancellor of the University of California, Davis. And she caught me as I got off the plane, and she said, expressed her deep concern, the deep concern that it had for her and her operation. She went on to discuss the critical research that, Mr. Speaker, is the Rules Committee here? No. I'll continue on. I see one of my colleagues has arrived. I was told Rules Committee might be coming with some... I'd be happy to yield.
What purpose is the gentleman from Florida?
Mr. Speaker, I send to the desk a privileged report from the Committee on Rules for filing under the rule.
The court will report the title.
Report to accompany House Resolution 385, resolution providing for consideration of the bill H.R. 3080 to provide for improvements to the rivers and harbors of the United States, to provide for the conservation and development of water and related resources, and for other purposes.
Refer to the House calendar and order printed.
Thank you. I was happy to yield, particularly since the issue has to do with the Water Resources Development Act. I'll come to that in a few moments, but I'd like to finish on the effect of the shutdown on the University of California. Research projects that were underway simply stopped. Sitting next to me on the airplane coming out was a woman who was running a health and nutrition program for the U.S. Department of Agriculture that was associated with the University of California, Davis, shut down for 16 days. and the enormous challenge of starting back up, shutting down, then starting back up, the lost efficiency and the lost research that took place. Those kinds of problems are repeat throughout my district. Some of the folks at Travis and Beale Air Force Base, over 1,000 civilian employees were furloughed. In Lake County, the County Family Service Center, which provides support for victims of child abuse, domestic abuse, and rape, had to reduce its services. As I mentioned, the University of California and the U.S. Department of Agriculture weren't able to operate. Farmers who needed to get loans at the service center couldn't get them right in the middle of the harvest season. Companies that needed licenses from the Department of Commerce to export advanced technology had all of their orders on hold, and undoubtedly some of them were lost. In the far north of California, the wildlife refuges were closed during the opening of the duck season and also the antelope and deer season. In my own district in Dixon, an annual stand down for struggling veterans had to scramble for money to cover the Department of Labor loan that was not made available. Small Business Administration was unable to approve business loans. The entire economy of the United States lost over $24 billion. The economic growth of the nation probably lost as much as a half a percentage point. And for what? For what? It's hard to even begin to describe what the argument was all about over the Affordable Health Care Act, an act that is now providing health care services to over 4 million young men and women who are able to stay on their family's health insurance, for seniors who are getting preventive health care services. It goes on and on. But here we are once again. We got past all of that. Where do we go tomorrow? Well, tomorrow we begin once again the struggle to define this government's future and really to define the future of America. I'm going to spend a few moments talking about that struggle because on January 15th, there will be yet one more crisis point, a fulcrum point upon which the issues of government will be leveraged one way or the other. We've seen 5 such crisis points in the last 3 years, and each one a crisis building up to a point where the American economy doesn't know what to expect and therefore does not make the critical investments, does not attempt to grow because they don't know what the economic political future will be. We're going to endure that not just once in the next 3 months, but twice. January 15th will be the first opportunity for the next crisis, a crisis that will be about opening government or not, because once again it'll be a funding crisis. Will we be able to appropriate the money to operate the federal government? Less than a month later, on February 7th, will there be one more additional debt crisis? Once again, a default cliff will be reached. And so the American economy, like a racehorse at a gate, hearing the trumpet, looking for the gate to open, ready to get out there and charge down the track, the American economy will face once again that gate slamming shut on it, even as it wants to grow, even as that economy, that great American racehorse economy, wants to head down the track. That gate has the potential of slamming shut. The uncertainty will be there once again. We've got to end these fiscal crises. It's in the interest of Democrats and Republicans to end these manufactured crises and to put in place a long-term stable policy, one that allows this government to make the critical investments to grow the economy, to put in place a tax policy that's sensible and long-range and helps to balance the budget, that makes the necessary cuts of those programs that are not essential and maintains and even enhances those that are essential. Let me put up on the board just for a moment some of the numbers that we're dealing with over the next couple of months. Now, I don't say this is the best chart. It's actually a bit confusing, but I think we need to try to understand the numbers. This number, $1.203